Hello, Gus here again. Welcome to week one of the SPEX-615 Decision Making and Change Management course. I want to give you a preview of what's going on this week. So we got lots of stuff happening in the first week. We're all trying to get to know each other. We're going to post videos about ourselves, comment on those in the discussion forum. We're also going to be starting to think about our project and starting to think about topics that we might use for our team project. There's a survey out there asking you for asking about your background, and that's going to help me form teams quickly so that you guys can get up and running quickly with your teams. So there's a lot of stuff happening, and please, check the syllabus and check online in the course to see what exactly is happening. But I wanted to introduce you to our main topic for this week, which is the psychology of change. And I'm going to share my screen here in a moment. But the psychology of change really refers to, what's going on in the brains of the individuals within your organization when a change initiative comes up, right? When they hear about a change, you're rolling out a new system, you're putting out a new process, a new procedure, a new corporate values around this, new strategic priorities around that, new stuff happening all the time in your organization. Sometimes small things, sometimes big things, but it's change. And as people are being hit with that change in your organization, how are they responding to it? And so this week's readings and the discussions really are all about how do individuals respond to change. And I know I've said in the past that this course is about organizational change, but you can't have organizational change unless some changes happen in each of the individuals within your organization, right? If Susie in accounting and John in finance and Ahmad in IT, if they decide that they don't want to adopt this change, there's a lot that they can do to undermine it. They can resist it. They can find workarounds. They can talk bad about it and bring other people down. They can ignore it, frankly, and they can do a lot to resist the change and make it difficult for the change to be successful. And that's why 70 to 85% of change initiatives are unsuccessful. Is because they can't get enough people to change their attitudes and behaviors in order to be able to support that change. So that's why the psychology of change is so important. And so that's why this week I wanted to expose you to Dr. Britt Andrietta, and I'm going to share my screen here for a moment. Bear with me. Yep. Sorry, just took a moment there. Right. So Dr. Britt Andrietta, she is a well-known author, written a lot of really great books and has developed some courses on LinkedIn Learning and stuff that you can check out. But in particular, she's written these 3 books on neuroscience, Wired to Connect, Wired to Grow, and Wired to Resist. And Wired to Resist is one of the supplemental reading assignments that you have if it's optional for you. There's some really good stuff in there. I highly recommend reading this book, and it's a short one, so you should easy enough time. But to save you some time, rather than have you read the whole book, I just had you watch this week a video of Dr. Britt Andrietta talking about certain aspects of change, and in particular, she's talking about change load and the change matrix, and how that cumulative effect of all those changes coming at people can affect their behaviors, and how they respond then to your change initiative is a lot of times governed by how they responded to all the previous change initiatives that have come before and that are still coming today. But in the book, there are several other concepts, and she alludes to them in the videos, but I wanted to point them out because I think they're important. She doesn't talk too much about it in the video, but she does mention the importance of motivation, how at the individual level, people need to be motivated to change. And she has this nice little matrix in her book that deals with the motivation for change. And you can see here that it's dependent, people's motivation for change is dependent on 2 things. One, to what extent do they desire that change? Is it a good thing that's going to happen to them? Or do they see it as something bad? It's going to be more work or less fun or whatever. So that's one factor. The other is choice. To what extent do they have a choice in the matter? In her book, she talks about getting promoted. Like her company got bought. She worked for LinkedIn and it got bought up. No, she worked for Linda and it got bought by LinkedIn. and she was promoted, and that's great, good stuff, but it also means a lot of work and all kinds of other stuff. But more importantly, she didn't really have much of a choice in the matter. It's like, congratulations, you're promoted. and so she talked about the struggle of that, right? Of dealing with the fact that it's a good thing, but she didn't have a choice in it. And so she, of course, did it, and she walked with purpose and embraced the opportunity, but she didn't really run through walls to try to make it happen because she didn't have a choice in the matter, right? And had she had a choice in the matter and she chose to do it, and it was something she saw as good, she would have really been all in on that change. But on the other side of that spectrum, or not is people who don't have a change and don't have a choice, and many times when you're doing these organizational change initiatives, 98% of the people have zero choice of whether or not this thing is going to happen. And so that's very relevant for us. And if they don't desire the choice, if they don't see the benefit of it, then they're much more likely to resist, dig their heels in, and find ways to undermine your change initiative. So it's I think, a helpful graphic here to understand, generally speaking, what happens with change, that it's a factor, the motivation for change is a factor of desire and choice. The other part that I think is important from her book, which she alludes to in the video, the importance of brain structures, the neuroscience of the brain, of change. And there are 4 structures in the brain that are particularly relevant for us as change agents. Let's start with the amygdala oblongata. The amygdala, you may have heard about this in other things that you've seen before on emotional intelligence and what have you, but the amygdala controls your fight or flight response. Something bad happens, or let's say somebody jumps out of a corner, brother or sister or somebody like that jumps out of a corner and scares you. What happens is your amygdala sees that first before any other part of your brain does. It gets the first chance at it, and its initial reaction is, oh, something bad's happened. I need to prepare you to do something about that, whether it's to fight it or to flight it, or to run away, right? So either you're gonna start punching your brother or sister, or you're gonna be running away, or you're gonna be frozen in place, right? But you're gonna have some sort of reaction to it. So I wanna prepare you, so I'm gonna increase your blood pressure to get more blood moving throughout your body, so that you are ready to do whatever it is you need to do. I'm gonna sharpen your eyesight, I'm gonna sharpen your hearing, I'm gonna sharpen your sense of smell. Everything is going to become sharper and more immediate. I'm going to speed things up in your brain. I'm going to clear everything else out so that you can focus on this thing that just jumped out at you from in the hallway. And so now your body is primed from head to toe, is primed to do something about that thing that just attacked you. So that's what the amygdala does, and that's really valuable. That's you can understand why that's been with us since the earliest days of man. And that every animal in the animal kingdom has an amygdala to help them with their fight or flight response. But it's also an issue for us as change agents, because oftentimes change is scary. Something new is like a brother or sister sneaking up, in the hallway, popping out of a closet. It's something you don't know if it's good or bad, but the fact that it's happening is scary, right? The initial reaction is oftentimes one of fear, of change. And the reaction oftentimes is a fight or flight response to that change. And so we as change agents need to try to find a way to keep that amygdala quiet and calm during these change initiatives, and make everybody feel like this is okay, this is normal, it's no big deal, it's going to be good, it's going to be great. Right? So there's a lot of soothing that we need to do as change agents to keep the amygdala quiet. The basal ganglia, it focuses on behavior patterns. And so like when I pick up a book, for example, like this book, I would read the cover and then I would jump to the table of contents. And that's how I'm deciding, whether or not I want to read this book further, if I want to explore it further. My daughter, she looks at the cover and then she jumps to the last page of the book because she feels like if it has a good ending, then maybe it's worth reading. I don't get it, but that's her basal ganglia telling her to do that because that's the established pattern in her mind. For any book. So any book she picks up now, whether it's a textbook for school or summer reading, fun kind of book, she does the same sort of thing. It's kind of funny to watch. But I do the same thing too. I just do something different. And so if either of us are going to change our habits, right, our behaviors, we're going to have to address the basal ganglia in some way, right? We're going to have to get the basal ganglia to replace the old way of doing it with the new way of doing it. We're going to have to find ways to make the basal ganglia happy and cooperative in that process. The third, the habenula tracks failure and change fatigue. The more change we get hit with, the more there is a difference between what we expected and what happened. Your habenula helps to close that gap, and it soothes you. It tries to make you feel it's okay. You wanted a $10 raise, but you only got a $5 raise. Here, I'll give you, I'll you know, soothe you and calm you down by releasing certain chemicals in your brain. That's great, but the habenula can get tired of doing that day in, day out. Disappointment. You know, you weren't able to do things right because the process has changed. You went to go do this and the system has changed and the system's not working. And this is every time the habenula is working and it's on overdrive, trying to keep up with all the changes happening and all the disappointments and all the ways in which you just couldn't quite do what you wanted to do. And that tires your habenula out, right? And it creates change fatigue in a person. So we obviously have to deal with that as change agents. How do we manage change fatigue? And that's a big part of what Andrea's video is about in this particular case. The fourth thing, the entorhinal cortex maps physical space, but also abstract spaces like social networks. So in your brain, you have a sense of what the layout of your house is, your home, and how you get to the bathroom, how you get to the kitchen, how you get to the closet, how much space you have in the closet, where's that coat that you need? Oh, it's in this closet, or I left it laying on the couch, right? It maps all this stuff. It keeps all these maps straight in your head of physical spaces, but also social and other abstract spaces like processes, for example, like how do I know to drive a car? Well, my brain, my entorhinal cortex has a map of the car and all the procedures for how to drive a car, right? And that's why I can kind of do it on autopilot without thinking too much, because my entorhinal cortex is essentially handling all the work of getting me to work on time or getting me to wherever I need to get to on time, because I'm not actively thinking about my driving all that much. So the entorhinal cortex is very important for us because for any given procedure, system, or whatever, there is a way of doing things. And if we want to change people's behavior and have them do things in a different way, we need to make sure that we supply them with a new map, right? We need to give them there's the old way, here's the new way. Substitute this map for the old map, and now you'll be able to navigate things. So that way, when you go from your Honda to your Toyota or to your BMW, whatever it is, you're going to have slightly different maps, and we're going to provide them for you to make it easy for you to go from one thing to the next. And so change agents need to be worried about these four regions of the brain, these four structures, and know how to have strategies that help to address all four of them. And the books and the articles and things like that you'll be looking at throughout this semester will give you tips and strategies and tactics for addressing all these structures. So anyway, that's this week. It's all about the psychology of change. Hopefully you took a little bit something away from what I just shared with you, but also there's the video from Andrea to take a look at. And the only other thing I just want to share with you real quick is that here in week 1, we're asking you to start thinking about your topic, your organizational need. So in your project template and job aid in that slide deck, you will also, we talked about the organizational change journey back in the last video, but then the next section gets into perceived need. And there's a little job aid in there that you should take a look at that asks you to think about what is the perceived need, and then do a little bit of needs analysis. What have you observed? What are people saying about it? Many of you are analytics majors. Having data is really important to us as analytics people. So making data-driven decisions is really important to us. So hopefully with the topic that you're picking, the organization that you're picking, it's one where maybe you have access to some data, access to some people so you can hear what they're saying, access to the organization so you can observe what's happening. So that would be an ideal type of situation for you as you're thinking about types of projects that you could use for your team project. And so think about that this week. Next week, you're going to be meeting with your team and actually starting to brainstorm, right? Sharing ideas about what you could do and working your way through that to come up with an idea that you're going to pursue for the rest of the semester. So just wanted to point out those resources for you. and you know, please take advantage of them. Don't wallow. And I'm here if you need me. If you have questions, I'm here. Don't hesitate to ask. Okay. Thank you, and have a good week.